Hi, everybody. I'm here with Rod Rescueman, whose real name is Andy Chambers. He had a story about his experiences. It was quite a lengthy story, in-depth report on PJ Media regarding himself and custody of his child and the Child Protective Services and all of that stuff. And he asked me if I would be interested in his story. I thought, perfect. And so I just wanted to get him on here so that he could tell you guys all everything that he's been dealing with for the last however long. So without further ado, Andy Chambers, living in Mississippi, but not because he wants to.
No, definitely not because I want to. I came here for a temporary job. I was supposed to be helping remodel an old restaurant. Guy wants to reopen it. He was friends with somebody I knew. I need a little extra money. So I came here for I think I was supposed to be here maybe 3 weeks, a month and a half. That was in January.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Essentially what happened, let's see, back in, good Lord, I guess it was 2015, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I had a girlfriend and we had a daughter. She walked out on me and the daughter, dumped her off in her mother's lap, and took off out of state to go live with some dude she met on the internet or something like that. And I fought and finally got my daughter handed back to me.
Okay.
And, I spent the next 4 years taking care of her by myself. We were in Colorado at the time, and we moved from Colorado to the Los Angeles area and found out how ungodly expensive that is.
Yeah.
It did not work out well. But we stayed there for about a year, and then I moved over here to Mississippi because this is where I'm from originally, and I can still get in-state tuition here. I wanted to try my hand at school.
Okay.
Didn't do very well in school. Found out I'm not that smart after all. Maybe if it was just me, I could have done better, but just me and a daughter and no support, it was just, 6 hours of homework every night. It was just too much.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. It's hard enough just holding down a regular job while you have a kid and no outside
Oh yeah, I had to
means
have
of
that
support.
too. Yeah, I had to have a job too. So it was just, it was just too much. It was overwhelming. I was going to flunk out of school if I kept going at it. So I did a year. And then I figured, let's go, try to get somewhere else in life. And if I can come back to school later, I'll do that.
Okay.
So I packed up and moved here to Vicksburg, where a friend of mine had offered me the temporary job. This would give me enough money to help me get back out west. I have a lot more people out west than I do here. And that was the goal.
Okay.
Well, her mother... it's one of her favorite pastimes is to call CPS on us. I've dealt with these people a dozen times in 3 different states.
Yikes.
And I've never really had a problem out of them. They're irritating and they push their supposed authority a little too far.
Right.
But they never did anything that was really detrimental to us. They'd come over the house, they'd demand to come inside. And I would always tell them, I live in America, and in America, government agents need a warrant.
Right.
That's the end of that story. We're not going to discuss this any further. Just go get it or have a good day. I've never even had one of them try to get it. They look at my daughter. She's happy. She's healthy. She's not scared of me a bit.
Right.
And they move on. They go find their next victim or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I got here to Vicksburg, and that is not what happened. I guess that she called or had one of her friends call. I don't know. See, that's one of the problems with it is it's all anonymous.
Yeah.
So you have no idea who did this to you.
Right. And they might not even have any idea.
They don't. They actually do not know who called and told them. But I have spoken to my ex and kind of gotten a little bit of what the story is. Basically, she got a friend of hers to call this time. This is a woman who doesn't know me, has never met me, has never been to my house, but she talked her into calling and saying that, I didn't have anything in my house but ramen noodles and I don't even remember. It was just a bunch of silliness. Yeah.
Basically, you're neglecting your child, not feeding her properly, and the kid's being raised by wolves. So
right. That whole scenario. So I got a call from CPS while I was on the road. I was stopped off in a Walmart, grabbing some stuff, and the phone rang, and it's CPS, and they want to come check out my house. And I explained to them, like, no, I've already moved out of there. I've handed the keys back in. Like, I don't live in, Starkville anymore. So I'm sorry. I don't know what to do for you.
Right.
And they didn't know how to handle that. They have to do something, they have to do something as per their policies.
Right.
So they kept on and kept on. And finally I was like, look, I'm moving to a new town. When I get there, I'll come check in with, the office there. I have no problem with that. I don't want y'all causing me a bunch of problems. We'll just do it that way.
Right.
And they said, okay. So I got here to Vicksburg. On my second day here, I went and signed my daughter up at her new school. When I did that, I had to, of course, give them proof of residency, my address and so forth.
Right.
And that updated the system. So the CPS office here immediately got my address. And I don't think it was the next day, but the next day after that, I'm standing out front, Belle's playing out in the yard, and a car pulls in and a lady gets out with a bunch of badges hanging around her neck. And I knew exactly who she was.
Yep.
And she comes walking up, and her first demand was to take a picture of my daughter. And I said, well, why do you need to take a picture of her? And she didn't answer me. She just turned her phone around and snapped a picture of her.
Okay.
That kind of irritated me a little bit, but we'll move on from that, I figure. And then she's demanding to take my daughter off somewhere where I can't hear and have a conversation with her. And I tell her, no, we're not going to do that either. I won't interfere at all, but you can have a conversation with her right here in front of me. That's how I'd prefer to do this. I don't know you. And she got really upset by that and didn't say another word and hopped in her car and literally peeled out of the parking lot.
Nice.
Yeah. And I thought, well, great. Got one of these and, went on with my day.
Now she's annoyed with me. Yeah.
Yeah. I've made an enemy with, scary amounts of power for something simple. Yeah. But so she comes back the next day and she wants to come in the house. And I explained to her, just like I've explained to every other one, I have no problem with you coming in the house. There's nothing in there that I, have to hide. But I'm a constitutionalist. Right. I have been told my whole life how the country I live in is run. And I would prefer that it's run that way in the case of me.
Yeah.
She got really upset. She started telling me it'll take me 15 minutes to go get this warrant. And she's telling me this in a threatening manner. And I'm responding with, okay, please do. I'll see you in 15 minutes. I don't have a problem with that, but we're not going to go around it.
Yeah.
She went on and on and on, argued with me forever. Got her supervisor on the phone, put her supervisor on speakerphone. Supervisor starts telling me that they don't need a warrant. They're CPS. You do what you're told when they show up, or they'll take your children. I mean, it got really nasty, really, really fast.
Oh my.
And I just stood my ground. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I've spoken to lawyers about this before and always been assured, like, yeah, they'll threaten, they'll tell you all this stuff, but they can't do anything if you didn't do anything wrong.
Oh, yes, they can.
So I rolled with that. Oh, yes, they can. The next day, I pulled Belle out of school early. I went up there about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and grabbed her up. and took her to the CPS office.
Oh.
Went in there, asked for a supervisor, got the supervisor. We went and sat in her office for almost 2 hours, where I just explained to her why I'm doing what I'm doing. That, you know, if we don't maintain these values, then they go away.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, you know, and they don't just go away for me, they go away for everybody.
Right.
So I was trying to explain that to her, and she was really, you know,
seemed
at least
receptive.
she seemed very receptive to this.
Yeah.
She, you know, she told me, oh, well, that's not a problem. We do have to come in and look around your house. That is part of our policy and so forth. But it's not hard for us to get this warrant. We'll just get it. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But, you know, in the meantime, here she is. Look her over. Talk to her. I have no problem with any of this. Let's get this done. I don't want you people in my life.
Yeah.
And the supervisor, you know, sounded agreeable to all of this. I left feeling better about this whole situation. Like, this is going to be all right. I've gone up and gotten these people off my back.
Yeah.
I get home. I get a call from my landlord about 10 minutes after I walk in the door. That same supervisor had just called him demanding that he let her into my apartment.
Oh my God.
And you know, I won't. I don't know which policy on profanity here is, so I won't say.
Go
what
ahead.
he
Go
told
ahead.
her.
Go
He told her to
ahead.
go fuck herself.
Yeah.
He flat out told. This is a preacher, by the way. That's how much he hates these people. He told her to go fuck herself.
Perfect.
And
well, maybe not perfect, because maybe if he'd been nicer,
yeah, maybe. There's no telling. Yeah, there's no telling how much that added to my dilemma. But
yeah.
You know, I agreed with what he said. You know, he asked them, you know, did he say it was okay for you to go in there? And they said, well, no, that's why we're calling you. And he's like, well,
that's
I don't know
illegal.
what to tell you.
That's illegal, right? I can't.
They don't care about that.
In.
Illegal is not something that comes into the conversation when you're dealing with CPS.
It's a violation.
I've been dealing with them almost a year.
It's a violation of whatever kind of thing you have, you know, in terms of a landlord/tenant act.
Oh yeah.
You know, good grief.
I mean, I could just say, you know, if he were to do that, then I could just walk in there and say, where's my $15,000 cash I had? Yeah. I had it right here on the coffee table. I mean, it's just, you know, so yeah, he knew better than to do that. And I was proud of him for it.
Yeah.
So they came to my house again the next day, this time with cops.
Oh my God.
And they told me that, you know, if I don't let them in, then the cops are going to force me to let them in. So I kind of looked around and I said, look, are y'all here to enforce her will? And they threw their hands up and said, no, no, we're not touching this.
Yeah, no, they're not going to
have to come when she call. But, you know, you're right. She needs a warrant. We're not doing this. I said, thank you. I went over, I shook their hands. I said, you know, it's nice to see.
Yeah.
And that made her really mad.
Oh, dear.
So the next day I went up to Belle's school. And I said, look, I'm pretty sure CPS is going to come up here and try to talk to Belle. I've already told her that it is okay for her to tell people, I don't want to talk to you because I don't know you.
Right.
Now, I don't know if she did that or not, because, yes, they did go up there and talk to her. But the people at the school informed me that not only could they not stop them, they couldn't inform me if this happened.
Oh.
That it was to be a secret from me.
Yeah.
And I asked them why, and they said, well, we work for the same county. Yeah, so I tried to argue with them. Wasn't a whole lot to be done there, so
you know,
I didn't make any headway.
Okay, I can sort of see it if you have a case of a genuinely abused child.
Right.
Right. That you would not want to tip off the abusive parent to the fact that CPS went and talked to the child.
Indeed.
You know, that would be, you know, and I can understand why CPS exists. I can understand it because you know, you hear all the time about horrific cases of child abuse, you know, that occur sometimes when CPS is, you know, actually has investigated and has looked into it and they're on the radar of CPS, and there are still cases that fall through the cracks and end up in the deaths or horrific injuries of children. But so I can see the school keeping that from you. I hope the school, someone from the school sat with your daughter Um,
I wouldn't know. They have their own. I guess you would call them like a social worker liaison at every
mhm.
school down south. I've never seen this before till I moved back down south.
Hmm.
But they have a social worker who basically this is an employee of CPS that works at or I guess an employee of DHS, the health services.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I would assume that woman sat in on it. I
Okay.
don't know. Before the end of this story, you're going to find out that the school, they weren't very nice people after all. They got involved much later in this story in a way that made me sick to my stomach. But
Oh dear.
so, so yeah, they told me they couldn't do anything. And, I argued with them, wasn't getting anywhere. And I just said, all right, whatever, and I left.
Right.
I got, I think, 3 more visits from the same CPS lady. She wouldn't go get the 15 minutes that it would take them to go get this warrant. They
Mhm.
wouldn't do that. They just would not go and get the warrant. They just kept showing up and demanding entry without it. And they would threaten this and threaten that. And I just, like I said, I just stood my ground. Nope, we're not doing that. This is how it's going to have to be. And it's not going to be another way.
Okay.
So she shows up that last time and she tells me she's got the couple of sheriff's deputies with her this time. She didn't bring
Mhm.
the police, she brought sheriff's deputies. And she had brought them once before, the same 2 guys.
Okay.
And she demands entry. I tell her no. I ask the deputies, do y'all intend to push past me? They say no. She tells me she doesn't need a warrant. And I explain to her, look, if you didn't need a warrant, you wouldn't be asking me for entry. You'd be having these gentlemen push me aside.
Right.
That's the reality of the situation. So anything else you're saying to me doesn't matter.
Right.
So the 2 deputies pull her off to the side, and I heard them. They're like 10 feet away from me. I could plainly hear them say, "Look, stop calling us. We're not going to come out here and help you harass this guy. Get the damn warrant or leave him alone."
Wow.
Well, that made her really mad.
Yeah.
So she comes back up to the door and she tells me that if I make her go get a warrant, she's not going to get a warrant. She is instead going to take my child. I told her, yeah, I don't think you can do that. I didn't do anything wrong. We're going to stick with this and we're going to go get a warrant. Right. And she got in her car and she drove off.
Oh dear.
The next morning I dropped Belle off at school. It was actually really weird. I've dropped Belle off at school, every day she's gone to school since she was first going to school.
Yeah.
And they do the carpool lane. You pull up and you let your child out, and then one of the teachers walks them up to the door holding their hand, and you do it one at a time and all that stuff. And I
Right.
always sit there. I'm that asshole that sits there holding up the line until my child is inside the door. Partly because I want to keep an eye on her, and partly because I'm hoping she'll turn back around and wave at me.
Oh.
And she had never, ever done this. She's always so excited to tell her teacher what she watched last night or what we did or whatever that I'm gone. This was the first day ever she turned around and waved at me. And I was just thrilled. I waved back like, all right, baby, bye, And it was really nice. And that was one of the last times I ever saw her.
Oh dear.
I get a knock on the door about 2.5 hours later. I was getting ready. I had to go to work in like 30 minutes after this. And it's the lady from CPS again. She's got one sheriff's deputy with her this time, a new one that I don't recognize.
Okay.
And I get up. I'm like, okay, surely they've got the warrant this time. Surely that's what this is. We can get this nonsense over and they can go away. And I open the door and I say, hey, did you get the warrant? And she's like, no, we went up to the school and we placed your child in custody.
Oh my God.
And I said, well, that's horrible. And she's like, oh, I agree, with a big, huge grin on her face. I lived right next to a woman who was sitting out front watching this, and I had to walk over there and calm her down. The woman that lives next door to me was about to come over there and beat her ass
Oh wow.
for smiling at me while she was doing this.
Oh my God.
And I had to break away from the conversation and go over there and be like, look, calm down. It's all good. Just let me
Wow.
handle this. Please don't beat this woman up in front of my door.
Holy shit.
And so they hand me paperwork telling me I have to be at court the next morning, 9 a.m. the next morning. So I called my pastor and I told him what was going on. And he told me, hang on, let me make some phone calls. And he found an attorney who is a friend of his who agreed to come up there and just kind of help me through this. Because we thought, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to just get her back. I didn't do anything wrong. So he was going to come up there, just this one-time deal, and give me a hand. And wasn't going to charge me for it. It was really, really nice of him.
Yeah.
So that kind of made me breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. And I waited till the next day, and I got up and I went to court. And we get to court, and the attorney went in the back and tried to talk to the CPS women. Look, he didn't do anything wrong. Just give him his kid back. Let's not make a big deal out of this.
Right.
And he came back out all confused looking, and he's like, "What did you do?" I'm like, I don't know. What did I do? And he said, "Well, they said they're not ever giving your child back."
Wow.
And of course, my response is, who the fuck do these people think they are?
Right.
And he just kind of rolled his eyes at me and was like, "Well, they're CPS,
Yeah.
So we get in the courtroom, and the judge asks, "What did he do that caused you to take his child?" And the CPS woman said, "He was uncooperative."
Oh.
And he looked over at me and he said, "What does that mean?" And I said, "I just wanted a warrant before I let her in my house. That's it." And the judge got mad. I mean, he got visibly mad at them, not me.
Wow.
And he looks over at me and he says, "Look, Mr. Chambers, I'm really sorry about this. It's a bit of a process, but we're going to get your little girl back to you. Just go on home. We'll keep in touch. We'll let you know what's going on. And I'm sorry, but you are dismissed." So I gathered up my stuff, and, me and the attorney and the pastor will walk outside. And all the attorneys I've talked to tell me that this is actually an important part of this story. We are outside the court building. We're in the parking lot. I'm leaned up against my car. I'm upset. I wanted my baby back.
Right.
And my pastor and the attorney are telling me, "Look, just calm down. That went really well. He's going to get her back to you. Everything's going to be fine." And then somebody sticks their head out the courthouse and says, "Mr. Chambers, the judge wants to see you again."
Uh-oh.
So I go back in and I sit down, and he is immediately screaming at me, shaking a piece of paper above his head. "I just got a report that you ran around her school freaking out and scaring the hell out of everybody, screaming, 'I love Hitler. Hitler is great.'"
What?
Yeah, and my jaw dropped. And he's like, "Don't you look at me like that. We don't tolerate that shit here in Warren County."
Oh my God.
And he's like, "What's your problem?" I'm like, "I'm just shocked to hear that." He's like, "Well, so am I." And he immediately issued new orders. Restraining order between me and my daughter. I was not allowed to see her or talk to her. I had to go and undergo a psychological evaluation at my own expense, by the way.
Yeah, that's how they do it.
Very expensive.
Yes.
And, all this other stuff. And we'd meet back here at some point in the future. It wasn't even determined at this point. He didn't even set a future court date. So I walk out horrified. What the hell just happened?
Mm-hmm.
So I spent the next week trying to find a place to do the psychological evaluation and on the phone with the local sheriff.
Yeah.
I talked to the local sheriff, the local chief of police, and the chief of the campus police force. All the public schools around here have their own little police force.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to all three of these at length. The police chief and the chief of the school police would not give me any paperwork. They said that the lawyers won't let them hand me any paperwork. But the sheriff was more than happy to sign a letter saying, "I don't know anything about this incident you're talking about."
Right.
According to the incident that I understood, I ran around the school screaming, "I love Hitler," literally running through the hallways of the school like a madman until I had to be tackled and subdued by campus security, which would be that police force.
Right.
And then hauled off campus. There is no record of this.
Yeah, no, and the fact that they wouldn't give you documents is ridiculous because police reports are a matter of public record.
Right. And also, all three of them agreed there's no way that story would have ended with, and we tackled him and subdued him and then escorted him off campus. All three of them agreed, your ass would have been in jail.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. We might not have been able to actually charge you with anything, but we would have taken you down, gotten your fingerprints, gotten your information, because the parents in this community expect us to keep on top of crazy people doing crazy things at schools. I mean, it was just some made up nonsense, you know? But the judge bought it hook, line, and sinker. Surely he did this. So I went and got the psychological evaluation. Turns out I'm, just as crazy as everybody else, but I was fine.
Yeah, more crazy than anybody else.
And I took that in, and it was immediately torn up and thrown in the garbage. That was a common theme through this whole thing, is anything they wanted done, if it was to prove that I was in the wrong, it was very important. But the minute it would come back that, when I brought the report from the sheriff up saying I have no record of this whole Hitler thing, I don't know what you're talking about, then that whole thing disappeared. I never heard another word about that after that initial court date. So we went in for the second court date. I don't know, maybe a month later, a month and a half later. And they can't find anything wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong. They had gotten the guardian ad litem, which is basically like the court assigns your child an attorney. Yeah. He had come over, and I let him in my house. I was pissed to do it because, once again, he didn't get a warrant. But I just wanted this over with, so I let him on in. He didn't see a problem, and he put that in his report. So everything seemed to be going all right. Everything was moving along. I thought maybe they were going to give me my daughter back. And then at the end of the hearing, the guardian ad litem says, well, now I had an interview with the little girl, and she told me about a bad dream she had one time where her father turned into a zombie and ate part of her head. So I think we need at least another month of holding this child so we can get to the bottom of this whole zombie thing.
Oh, God.
And I'm just sitting there like, what are we really discussing in a professional court, whether or not I am indeed the Walking Dead? What are we doing right now?
Yeah.
So it was the day after that was when I finally got up enough money to hire an attorney. I hired a lady. Her incompetence knew no bounds. She came to 3 court hearings with me and literally stood next to me and stared at the wall while they accused me of everything under the sun. Before this whole thing was over, I was a Nazi. Now I'm a zombie. I think at the next one, it was... I can't remember what they came up with for the next. I think it was kind of a conglomeration of a couple other 2 things. But eventually at the second to last court hearing, they just flat out accused me of molesting her.
Oh, my God.
Now, the guardian ad litem said that he had actually had a conversation with the child about this, which horrifies me to begin with. She's 7 years old. What is a conversation about? Did I molest her? What did you ask her? What kind of things had she never thought about that you brought up to her?
Yeah, people in those positions need to, they should know. There's no excuse for them not to know that there's a right way and a wrong way to interview a child when you suspect that they're being sexually abused, because the Satanic Panic, McMartin Preschool, more than 100 prosecutions based on nothing but bullshit, all of them wrongful. Because kids can be, just by the nature of the questioning, can be led to fabricate situations, say what they will say what they believe the adult wants them to say.
Right. And they don't understand the consequences.
They don't understand the consequences. And then on top of that, what can actually happen is the child's memories can be altered to the point where they actually believe those things happened, and that in itself can be traumatizing for the child. Yeah. So there are horrible consequences for children who are questioned improperly, interrogated improperly about stuff like sexual abuse and other things. So Yeah, I would certainly be interested in seeing the recordings of those interviews with your child.
They're confidential, even from me. I'm not allowed to see.
Good grief.
Uh, I have through this whole thing. This went on. My court dealings went on from February until July, and I have walked away from that with 3 pieces of paper. That's how very little information you're allowed to have.
Good
At
grief.
least here in Mississippi, I've understood it is different in other places. They all operate differently.
Yeah.
Um, but no, so yeah, the guardian ad litem, he stepped forward and he said, "Look, I actually interviewed her about this, and she said no, that nothing like that has ever happened." And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. They needed another month to investigate.
Oh my God.
Well, by this point, they've called up her mother and gotten her involved in this whole thing. She lives in Missouri, and she has. I mean, I went up and showed them, phone records. Look, this is how often we hear from this chick. I'm
Yeah.
talking once every 6 months. Maybe. There was a whole year in there we didn't hear from her.
Right.
Here, I'll tell you this. This one seems to get everybody. This is the good sum up. She didn't see her daughter for 4 years. She very rarely had any contact with her.
Mhm.
She never once asked me to send her a picture of her.
Wow.
Never once. In 4 years, she didn't know what this child looked like anymore. That's how little she cared. And I hated dealing with her. I hate this woman, and I can't stand, dealing with her at all. But when it came to that, I would always let her talk to her when she called.
Yes.
If she'd have asked me for a picture, I would have sent it. If for no other reason than in some future court case when we were fighting over custody to show, look, I'm the reasonable one.
Yeah.
But she's had nothing to do with her. Not a single birthday present, not a single Christmas present. Very rarely ever calls. But they called her up and got her involved, which I would imagine is the reason why she was, repeatedly calling them. She didn't want to take me to custody court. She knew she would lose, just based off the circumstances of how she just left the state and abandoned her. So she went this route instead. I got really scared. They're going to give her to her mother. That's what they're going to do. I mean, I've got lots of friends that have had children and then had their families split up. I know how this goes more often than not. And I know that the children very often go with the woman, no matter what the circumstances are. And I got really scared of that. And I started talking to the guardian ad litem about it.
Mm-hmm.
I started trying to talk to my attorney about it and just figure out, and I was going up to the CPS office and talking to them about this. Like, look, if that's what y'all are trying to do, you're making the wrong decision.
Right.
I get where you're coming from. And I would agree. 9 times out of 10, children probably do need to go with the mother. I would agree 9 times out of 10. This is that 10th time. There's a reason we use phrases like 9 times out of 10.
Right.
Because one time that's not going to be the correct answer. And this is it. Well, CPS swore up and down that because she lived in a different state, they couldn't even recommend that the child goes with her. They can't do that. No, I have nothing to worry about there. That's not even in the cards.
Really?
Well, of course, that was a lie. That was their final recommendation to the court. And that was what the court ended up doing. They had her down. We were standing in the courtroom, and the judge asked, this was another example of if it could be used against me, it was important. But if it would, couldn't be used against me, then this is not a thing at all. We had another one of those on the last day of court where he asked her the story of how I got Belle. And her explanation didn't even have any details. I mean, anybody, this guy was a lawyer. Yeah, I'm sure he understands missing details might mean untruth, but he wasn't interested in that. So it was just simply, I stole her. I stole the child.
You stole
that was
the child.
Yep. I stole my daughter. She tried to let me visit with her one time, and I just took off and stole her. And then he looked over at me and he said,
is there like a missing person report that she filed at any point?
no, none of that. I mean, I had, plenty of documentation. I have plenty of documentation to back up what my story was, which he then turned to me and asked me. And he said, well, how do you say you got it? I say, well, we split up. I moved into an apartment literally across the street so that I could still, come over regularly and see her.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother kept demanding that I continue to pay their rent. And I did so for as long as I could. And then I said, look, I can't afford 2 apartments anymore. I can't do this.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to figure something else out. Well, then the house was empty one day when I went over there. And she explained to me that she went to live with her grandparents, which is about 30 minutes away from where we were. And that Belle was with her. And that's where she was living. And I was like, okay, well, can I talk to her? Oh, she's not here right now. She's off with, my cousin. All right. Call back the next day. Yeah, I want to talk to Belle. Oh, I'm not at home right now. This, that, and the other. This went on for 2.5 weeks of just excuses why I couldn't talk to her.
Right.
And I finally got wise. Like, I don't think any of this is the truth. Right. So I called her grandparents' house. Now, her grandparents hate her. She stole several $1,000s out of their safe when she was a teenager. And, they still have her over for family reunions and so forth, but they've hated her ever since.
Right. They don't trust her.
No, they don't like her a bit. So I called them up and I said, look, are they there? She's telling me that they're there. And they laughed. They're like, no, she's not welcome to stay here.
Yeah.
They're not here at all. We haven't seen them in, since the last time you were here with them, which was like the prior Thanksgiving. So I call her back up. I call her mom back up and I say, look, your grandparents say you're not staying there. Where is my daughter? I don't care where you are. Just where is Belle?
Mm-hmm.
She finally explains to me that she has moved off to Missouri to live with some dude she met playing Call of Duty.
Oh, God.
And, yeah, it's...
Those never end well.
No, it's not going well from what I understand, which is terrible because my daughter now lives there with these people. Yeah. But she moved off to Missouri to live with some dude she met on Call of Duty, and Belle is living with her mom. Now, me and her mom ain't never liked each other, like at all. We ain't never got along.
Okay.
But I called her up and I said, look, we gotta move past this. I want to see my little girl. For about the next month, she was constant excuses or fine, meet me at this fast food restaurant and blah, blah, blah. And then she would never show up.
Yeah.
Now, I don't blame her because the way the law works, if I picked Belle up and turned around and walked off with her, there wouldn't be a damn thing she could do. I'm her father. You're her grandmother.
Right.
I have the, the preeminent right here.
Yeah. And there's without a custody order in place or
there wouldn't have been anything she could do. Yeah. So she never showed up. So, but I kept bothering her. I kept calling every night, just bothering the hell out of her. And then finally I get a call from her mother one day saying, yeah, my mom just called and said that if I don't come pick Belle up right now, she's going to drop her off with social services.
Oh,
and I'm like, well, tell her to just give her to me. And she's like, yeah, no, she doesn't want to do that. She hates you. I'm like, okay, well then you get your ass in your car. You drive here from Missouri right now. You scoop her up and you bring her to me. Don't let our baby end up at social services. What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so she did. And she dropped her off. She didn't even spend any time with her. She literally went and picked her up, drove her straight up to my work where I had just gotten off work. I was hanging out eating macaroni and cheese with bacon in it. Oh my God.
Yep.
And she left. She just turned around and left. Just bye, and went back to Missouri.
Goodness. Good grief.
So that was what I told the judge happened. That is the story that I gave the judge. Mm-hmm. And he took his glasses off and he gets this real mean look on his face. And he said,
he just can't believe a mother would do that.
No. And 10 years ago, you couldn't have convinced me a mother would do that. But I know way too many single dads with stories just like mine. times are changing. They are changing, and a lot of things are changing with them, and that's one of them.
Oh, it's not even that times are changing. I'm sorry to tell you. Susan Smith. There was also I forget the name of the woman, but the book based on the story was called Little Sacrifices or something like that.
Sounds familiar.
Women who actually will kill their children in order to not jeopardize a new relationship with a new man.
Yeah.
That it's essentially like they just want to leave this whole business behind and move on to something new. Yeah. And if they feel like they can't do that through just abandonment, they'll sometimes actually go to the more extreme lengths of even murdering their own children. And this is not something that's new. It's not common, but it's certainly not something that's new. And so there have been women who have abandoned their children, just as there are men who abandon their children. And that's always been the case. So yeah.
And that would have been fine with me. I mean, to be totally honest, I would have preferred that Belle not have anything to do with her mother, just because I know her mother so well. She's not good people. I have a cursed taste. There's an old joke that me and some friends used to talk about. I could walk in a room with 50 women. 49 of them are laughing and talking and having a good time and enjoying each other's company. And one of them is screaming about how all the rest of them are horrible sluts. That one. That's the one. That's the one I want. Yep. I don't know what it is, but I am attracted to mean women.
Oh my God. You need to, I don't know.
I'm single for the rest of my life. That's what I'm doing. That's my solution. We're just not going to play anymore.
Oh, that might be a good idea, at least until you actually get yourself out of this habit. Because geez, it's I mean, maybe it's, I don't know, mean women. I mean, like, I know lots of guys who have a rescue complex, right? Who will, they want to rescue the woman who's a complete fuck up, right? And who it thrives on drama and essentially manufactures drama so that she can be at the center of it and is miserable and in constant need of being saved. I haven't really ever heard of anybody who specifically is just like, mean women make me hot.
Well, I think it's all right. You see them being a total bitch to everybody else, and then they're really nice to you.
Oh,
and it makes you feel a little special. Yeah, but that mean that you're seeing them do to everybody else, they're gonna do that to you one day. That's the part that never seems to sink into my head.
So your countermeasures are to stay single. I think that's probably a good idea, at least.
We're just not going to do that again for a long time. I got too much stuff going on in my life anyway.
Yeah. So okay.
But so the judge listened to both of our stories.
He didn't believe you because it was just too out there. It was just too outlandish.
His response on the record, by the way, I thought was golden. He took off his glasses and he looks back and forth and he says, well, now, one of y'all is lying. One of y'all is lying. And when I find out which one of you it is, that's perjury. I'm going to lock your ass up for at least 30 days for perjury. You don't come in my courtroom and start lying to me. I pulled my phone out and I said on the table, I said, right here in this phone, I got all the text records that'll show that everything I'm saying is true. He
wow.
Said, oh, okay. Well, I'm not interested in all that. And we moved on. So it was 30 days in jail. Nobody lies in my courtroom if it was me. But when I pull out my phone and say, well, here's proof that it's her. Now let's moving on.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
It pissed me off so bad.
Oh no, that's so typical. That is so fucking typical that, women, like, we had a case here in Canada, it was a very high profile case where 3 women outright lied on the stand, lied to police in their initial sworn complaints, then lied to the court, and nothing happened to them.
No,
Nothing fucking
no,
happened to them. And I'm
no.
just like, you're not even gonna prosecute them for criminal mischief, which is like the lesser crime that you could choose for, for somebody who lies in a sworn statement. Like, what the fuck is going on, right? Yeah, of course not, because they're women, and that would be mean. It would be mean.
Yeah. We don't want to be mean. Yeah, she
my
might
God.
cry.
Yeah.
I mean, really, she might cry, and that would just be devastating to everything that's going on around here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the judge finally just decided I'm just going to hand her off to her mother. Now I've come to find out that this is illegal. He doesn't have any jurisdiction to hand my daughter off to a person who doesn't live in this state.
Mm.
They didn't vet her. They didn't check her out. They didn't go to her home. She didn't have to undergo psychological evaluation.
Right.
There wasn't any of that with her. We're just going to give her to her. Now, no conditions were made where I get to visit with her, where I get to speak to her. They didn't even let me say goodbye to her.
I want to make it clear. So she alleged in court that you engaged in custodial interference and kidnapping.
Yeah, I guess that would probably be those sound like legitimate terms for what she was saying. Yeah.
So she accused you of one is, I think, a misdemeanor and the other is a felony in front of a judge. Why haven't you been charged with either of those?
Because this is another little trick.
It would have to be investigated. It would have to be investigated.
Yeah, they would rules of evidence would come into the mix. There's a lot of things that would snap into place that would be in my benefit.
Yeah.
If they were to bring any charges against me. I mean, for instance, they never bothered to come up with a reason why they had her. Me being uncooperative is not a reason for them to take her. It even says so in the state law, the Uniform Code Rules of the Family Court, and the CPS's own policy. That particular office's own policy states simply not cooperating is not grounds to take your child.
Right.
So that's all they ever said, except they would say, we believe that she is abused or neglected.
Right.
That was the quote unquote charge. Abused or neglected. Now, neither one of those are a description of an action.
Yeah.
If you say what happened to you today, and I say this person abused me, the first thing you're going to ask is, what did they do?
That's right.
Because abused me doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But that's all they could ever come up with. Yeah. So they threw everything out. They dismissed the case. They couldn't prove anything on me that I did anything wrong. So they threw out the case completely, but then instead of handing her back to me, they handed her off to her mother. And her mother is taken off and moved off to Missouri. And I've had about 3 conversations with her since July.
With your daughter?
Yeah. And she's forcing her to call her new boyfriend daddy.
Oh, fuck. I hate that.
That pissed me off to no end.
Yeah.
And she seemed a little weirded out by it too. She doesn't understand what's going on. You got to remember, she doesn't know her mother.
Yeah.
Her mother walked out on her when she was 3. You don't really form memories that young. She knows what she looks like, but she doesn't know her at all.
Yeah.
And then this woman is telling her, no, this is your daddy. This dude here.
My fucking God.
She was really late putting her in school. I don't know why, but I started getting calls from the foster parents that she had been staying with, which, by the way, that's another part of this story. The first foster parents they stuck her with beat the shit out of her.
Oh my God.
I have her now. I've never hit my child. I don't hurt my baby. I just don't do it. I was raised by a mother who was very heavy-handed, and I had a set of adopted grandparents who had the opposite approach.
Right.
And I learned that the opposite approach was very effective. I was not worried about my mom whooping my ass, but I was worried about Dede and Don being disappointed in me.
Right.
That had a significant effect. And I learned that that is a better way to raise your children. And, you know,
Yes.
in my opinion, at least with my baby.
Yep.
So she's never been hurt. And I've got her on camera. I pulled my phone out and recorded where she told me and the CPS workers in a visit one time how they were bending her fingers back, you know, like really far back,
Yep.
kicking her in the face, punching her in the face, kicking her in the stomach, tearing up her toys just to make her cry, all this kind of stuff. And they didn't care. I've got them on camera saying they don't care. That's not important. You know?
Grief.
So
So she's making these allegations spontaneously, and they're saying, well, that doesn't bear any investigation.
right, yeah. But they had to take her from me because I had the audacity to demand a warrant. I mean, this whole thing, everybody that's been involved in this knows exactly what this is. I pissed this woman off.
Yeah.
I should have kowtowed to her authority immediately. Who do I think I am? All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Another part of this that really got me was I have spoken to probably 1,000 lawyers within a 500-mile radius.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to find the right one for the right price. You have no idea how much money they want to help you with stuff like this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know they.
$30,000 to $50,000.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can't come up with that. You
Yeah.
know. And every one of them, you get on the phone with them and they say, okay, yeah, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about what's going on? I tell them the story, and then they say, oh, you must be in Warren County.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And I say, oh, yeah. I mean, the first couple of times I was like, well, how do you know that? And they're like, well, that's because that's the only county in the state that does that stuff.
Oh,
They're
dear.
notorious, you know, for just snatching up the kids left and right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, after the 20th time I've heard it, it didn't surprise me anymore. But yeah, I mean, this is a thing locally. And yeah, I mean, they just wrote off mine and my daughter's relationship. It was completely unimportant.
Yeah.
They didn't let me say bye to her. They didn't set up any kind of conditions where I can call her. Nothing. It was handled very disgustingly, and you know their motto or their credo, I guess, is best interests of the child.
Oh, yeah.
That child was never thought of once throughout this whole thing.
No, it's so frustrating so often, you know, when I hear stories from men regarding their children and how they've been treated by, you know, whatever system it is that they've been sort of sucked into. Is that it just saddens me when you have to realize that the only people who give a shit, like who really give a shit about that relationship between the dad and the kid, are the two people who don't have any say.
Yep.
Right, which is the dad and the kid.
Yep. The only two people who are completely unimportant to this process.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Holy shit! But you're trying to you know, get it to the point, get things to the point where you can actually take some form of legal action.
Yeah. I actually have quite a huge plate in front of me that I have to eat. I have to. All right. The judge on that last day specifically stated that he has no authority to grant custody. This is family court. Custody is a chancery court matter. So he has no authority to grant any kind of custody. So he is literally just handing Belle to her mother.
Yeah, with no jurisdiction in which to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
But he wrote in the order that he is placing her in the care and custody of the mother.
Okay.
Now, I've spoken to several attorneys about this, and they say, yeah, an attorney or another judge would know that when he says custody, he doesn't mean legal custody. He means physical custody. But he put that in there on purpose because a cop will look at that and say, no, she has custody.
Oh, God.
So I can't go. I mean, if he hadn't put that in, I could just go to her school and pick her up tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, and there wouldn't be anything anybody can say about it. But he put that in on purpose so that I can't do that. So I have to get that record changed. I have to get that order thrown out, so that I don't ever have any problems out of that with police.
Mhm.
I have to file for custody still here, but I have to do it this weird way because Belle's in Missouri, but she was here within the last 6 months and for more than 6 months. It's a big, long process there.
Right.
And then, I mean, the last step of this that I intend to do is I've understood that judges really have a lot of immunity. You can't hold them responsible for much, but I intend to try.
Yeah.
I definitely intend to try. And the CPS worker and her supervisor that did this, they don't have any immunity. So I'm going to make them pay too. We got to start doing something about this.
Yeah.
It's me today. It'll be somebody else tomorrow. It's somebody else right now.
Oh,
this is happening to somebody right this second.
There was it was actually a panel of 5 appeal court justices. I forget where it was in the United States. And I'm watching this video of these appeal court justices or circuit court justices or whatever you want to call them. I forget what it was, but I'm watching a supervisor responsible for social workers in the county arguing that her employees, her social workers,
didn't know they weren't allowed to lie. Is that the one you're talking about?
Didn't know they weren't allowed to lie to the court.
Yeah. Are you serious?
And these judges are sitting there with their jaws just gaping open going, what? Like, you're literally arguing that these people they've gone through training, right?
Yep.
They put their hand up, right, and swore to tell the truth.
Yep. So
help them God, right? And you're telling us that, well, they just didn't know they weren't allowed to lie. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? So this is a deeper problem than just the odd case that turns into a nightmare. Like I've talked to so many men who have had like absolutely egregious things happen to their children that just one in New York State who in a little town called or just outside of a town called Woodstock, that his daughter was essentially taken from him for absolutely no reason. And then when she was upset and chronically upset, lastingly upset about this, they put her on, she was like 5 years old, they put her on antipsychotic medication that in an off-label use, it's not supposed to be given to children, to get her to calm down. And this leads to the side effects of this medication is weight gain and heart problems. And leading to, over however long, the longer you take it, the more likely those problems are going to be permanent. And she's literally having heart palpitations, and she's put on, like, she's now morbidly obese, right? All to keep her from expressing her displeasure with the fact that she can't see her father.
Well, they get extra funding if they put your child, while they have your child, if they can put them on medication, they get extra funding for that.
I'm just blown away that this, and they
put Belle on pills, and they won't tell me what they are. I don't know what she was taking.
This is her mother who put this child on these pills. And
good Lord.
The dad had no idea, except that his daughter told him, when they actually had a visit for, I think it was an overnight visit, oh, I'm going to miss my pill. And her dad said, what pill? And she says, I don't know. And he says, well, can you describe it to me? And when he looked up what the pill looks like, and he Googled all over the place to figure out what pills she was on, it was an antipsychotic medication. And then he phoned the mother and was, what the hell are you doing? And she said, yeah. Well, because she's recalcitrant and always upset. So
let's certainly not deal with that. Let's just shove a pill down her throat. Because having to deal with your child being upset, that's parenting, and we don't do that anymore.
Or having
just get the pill.
or having to acknowledge that your child is upset for a reason, and then actually fostering a proper, regular relationship with the father, which is what the child's upset about not having. That would be an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Or it would mean that you'd have to, do something nice for someone you don't like anymore. Yep. Right. And it's so frustrating to me. It's so absolutely frustrating to me. I'm going to have to go pretty quick. Is there anything else that you want to tell about this story before we get to, how we can help you out with this?
Well, I mean, just, along the same lines, DeBelle was put on medication as well. Like I said, nobody will tell me what it was. And on 2 separate occasions, while she was at the foster home, she, where they were bending her fingers back and kicking her and punching her, she had to go to the emergency room twice. I still can't find out what for. I don't mean just no one will tell me. I mean, it's none of my business, and I'm not allowed to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's horrifying. This is my baby. I'm the only person she's ever known. Since she was 3 years old. It's just been the 2 of us. And they just swept it aside. It wasn't important at all.
Absolutely fucking egregious.
Just to show me who was boss.
Yeah.
By the way, that is the entire point of all of this. They wanted to show me who was boss. And they surely did. I do not, I don't think I live in the same country that I thought I lived in January.
Yeah, you went to bed in America and you woke up in Pyongyang.
Yep.
Good grief. Well, you have a crowdfunder.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you're raising funds so that you can actually try and get something done legally to help you reunite you with your daughter, and also maybe to hold some of these people accountable for what they did to you and to Belle. And I'm going to put that information in the low bar of this video, and I'm going to direct everybody on, who watches it to go there and throw some money in, because it's one of these things where it's so expensive to hold people accountable, people in positions of power who abuse that power. It is so freaking expensive to do that it's almost impossible for most people to do it. And
they only go after people that they know can't.
That's right.
My uncle made a good point about this. My uncle lives down in Florida, and I don't know, he's some kind of electrical engineer or something. He does all right for himself. And he said something to me about that when this first happened. They only did this because you were poor. And I was like, well, I don't know about that. And he's like, Andy, do you think they would have done this to me? He's like, I wouldn't have been as nice as you. When they asked to come in my house, I would have told them to go fuck themselves, and I would have slammed the door in their face. And that would have been the last I ever heard of them, because I do have the financial means to potentially fight this. You don't.
Yeah. That's really what it is they can get away with, if they can get away with it, and they have a desire to. And, I don't know whether this is a systemic problem in Warren County, in terms of something that's sort of baked into the system, or whether it's a matter of a few individuals who are acting egregiously. Please ignore the groaning of my dog. But acting egregiously and getting away with it because people higher up want to protect or preserve the system itself rather than shake it up and drain the swamp, or whatever you want to call it.
There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money made off of this too. Yeah. They get a lot of funding for this.
Oh yeah.
I've heard some interesting figures, and it's, you can't do this. You can't incentivize, the taking of people's children, or there's going to be the taking of people's children without reason.
Yeah, it's the same thing in Bar Harbor, Maine. There was a gentleman named Vladek Filler who was maliciously prosecuted by an assistant district attorney who had a rate of domestic violence and sexual assault prosecutions that was 40 times higher than any other prosecutor in the area.
Yeah.
And she was the first prosecutor in Maine to be disciplined by the Board of Overseers of the bar in the history of Maine. because of what she did to this man. And, you know, he just finally, after, God, it's been close to 10 years, he has just finally gotten a settlement from one of the people, one of the parties that he has sued. So it's just, but it takes forever and it's so expensive. And if you don't have the means yourself, the financial means yourself, and you don't have people at your back trying to get you those means to do it, you're just boned. There's nothing you can do. And it's not so much just a matter of helping an individual person get justice. Every time you help an individual person, I'm talking to my audience here, every time you help an individual person get justice and hold people in power accountable when they abuse that power, you're making it less likely that these injustices are going to happen in the future. And you're making it easier for other people, just due to case law and precedent and all of those things, making it easier for the next guy to get justice when it happens to him. So I'm going to send everybody who gives a shit about fathers and their children, who watches my channel, I'm gonna send them off to your crowdfunder and ask them to please donate a little bit of money, $1,
appreciate that.
$5.
Yeah, I've got a thought on that. Is there is no direct oversight. I mean, believe me, I've dealt with the governor, the attorney general. I mean, I've gone all the way up the ladder here. Nobody claims responsibility for these people. Nobody is their oversight. The court is their oversight. You, Karen, cannot sue these people or bring them to heel because they haven't done anything to you. So you can be upset about this all you want, but you have no recourse. Only I do, and I can't afford it.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, this isn't like, particularly in it differs from state to state. I think in California you can sue based on, as a third party.
Right.
And not as the victim in certain situations, but most places, no, the victim has to be the one to bring the lawsuit. And you, honestly, you have been wronged. I'm going to link also to the PJ Media article on your case, and any other information that any other links that you want to send me, I'll put them in the information section of this video when it goes up. But I have to go. My mother-in-law invited herself over for Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, you had mentioned that.
And I have a turkey to cook, and a disaster, a kitchen nightmare that Gordon Ramsay would be losing his freaking mind over to fix before I can even get the.
That's a scary man, that is.
Yeah, well, it's a scary kitchen, mine is. So there you go.
Well, one thing that I wanted to say that you can definitely cut out at the end if you wanted to. I understand that you are friends with a Dr. Randomer Cam, right?
Yes.
Okay. I've had people that I didn't know before tell me that things that I did helped them out in one way or another. It's a really good feeling. Mm-hmm. So I do want to see if I can get you to pass a message along to him.
Sure.
He does these videos with this old man puppet.
Oh, Codger.
Okay. Yeah. And two of them in particular. One of them, he was doing a Tucker interview with he kept calling him the goofy dick nozzle in a bow tie. Some guy from Canada talking about LGBTQAIPPP, whatever, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, I saw that one.
That one, and the one where he was going against Piers Morgan and the lady, and he was replacing the Janice, the Polish guy. Yeah.
The one
I watched those.
Like, women need to earn less because,
Yeah, because they're shorter. Yeah, that one. I watch those about once a week because this has really been a sad time for me, and those never fail to put a smile on my face. So tell him he is having at least some good effect, if nothing else than that. And please keep doing those.
Okay, I will keep this in. I will not even clip it out at the end, because I'm sure he'd be very, very pleased to hear that, and I will let him know just in case he's like Allison and doesn't bother watching any of my videos. Um, if
That he makes a cameo in this one.
he makes a cameo right at the end, and that you're very grateful for the stuff that he puts out because it brings a smile to your face, even in
I am actually, yeah.
these hard times. So that's
Yeah,
very sweet.
tell him I said keep it up, or if he's listening, keep it up, man.
All right, perfect. And I'm gonna leave it there. And thank you so much for coming on. And I will have this video up probably tomorrow, not today, because I'm gonna have to go through it a little bit, and I'm gonna be busy. But hopefully we can send some love and some money, love in the form of money, your way, and help get you started on this. Probably going to be, having been through dealing with a lawsuit myself for the last 3 years. It'll probably be a long process, and
I'm sure.
very, very inconvenient, so, and expensive.
Yep.
So we'll hopefully get you started on that. And I just want to say, yeah, thanks again for sharing your story, and
Thank you for having me.
I wish you all the luck in the world. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you go enjoy your turkey and your mother-in-law.
Oh,
and,
well, I'll enjoy the one and not the other. And I'm having 2 turkeys in the house today, and one
Yeah.
we're gonna eat, and the other we get to listen to. So
Well, it's just for today, right?
yeah, no, I like her. She's well intentioned but exhausting. So
Yeah.
but
Well, you have a good afternoon, and again, I thank you much for the help. And yeah, I'll shoot you a link. I made a new GoFundMe. Just made a new one. I'm gonna need more money than what I was originally asking for on the one that I sent you. So I just made a new one. So
All
I will
right.
send you a link to it.
Perfect. Okay.
All
well,
right. Well,
I will.
thank you much.
I will let you know. I'll send you a link when it goes up, and all of that. And I guess we can cross our fingers and hope that something good comes of this. So.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Bye-bye. Take
Bye.
care.
Yes, ma'am.